So far in season 2, we're getting some lesser seen villains. First Two-Face, then Clayface, now Mad Hatter face. We're talking about the Worrymen right now.
Not these dolls. They're Worrymen from Central America.
Hello friends, welcome back to the show. So glad to have you here once again. And if you're new, thanks for joining us. I hope that you'll consider subscribing, because if you're a big Batman fan like me and grew up on Batman the Animated Series, or even found Batman the Animated Series later in life, this is the show for you, because we talk about each and every episode of Batman the Animated Series. We review them, and we talk about them from the perspective of 25 years later. And today we're talking about The Worrymen, which originally aired on September 16th, 1993. So I just got to tell on myself a little bit. When I shot the episode Mudslide last week, I shot the entire episode, sat down to edit it, and realized it was completely out of focus. Clayface is back in another episode. I had the camera set to manual focus, and it was like focused on the background. I was completely blurry and very frustrated and very annoyed with myself. I sat down, reshot the whole episode, and thought, boy, I don't want to do that again. Better make sure that it's always in focus. So this week I sit down to shoot The Worrymen, and I am almost positive, I should say almost, that I sat down, that when I set up the camera, I looked at it, checked, double checked, made sure it was on autofocus, tested it, made sure everything worked, and it was great. Sat down to edit it the next day. So far in season 2, we're getting some lesser scenes villains. And it was completely out of focus. So here I am shooting this episode all over again, once again. And, you know, when I did it for Mudslide, I thought, I'm going to let it slide. I'm never going to tell anybody that I did this. And when it happened again, the very next episode, it's so unbelievably ridiculous and careless of myself that I had to share it with you. I'm not complaining, but it's very annoying. But hey, you know what? Second season, why not shoot all the episodes twice? If only it was a Two-Face episode. So far, Two-Face episodes, I've only had to shoot once. Wouldn't it be funny if this was out of focus right now? How do I look? Focus, I can see it tracking. See, I have a little tiny viewfinder over there. Not close enough to be able to see if I'm in focus.
But seriously.
When I originally sat down to watch this episode, now a couple of days ago, I realized, I thought that the Mad Hatter, this was the second appearance of the Mad Hatter, but I completely forgot about Perchance to Dream. And it's kind of similar in this sense of this episode, that he doesn't come in until the end of this. So I was happy to see him back. Mad Hatter is in my opinion, I think is a highly underrated villain. He's just so different from the other villains. And to have Roddy McDowall as the voice actor just ramps this character up in my book. But we're going to talk all about that right after my 60-second rundown of the episode. Bruce Wayne is at the socialite party where we have Veronica just returns from her travels abroad, and she brings back all these little miniature worrymen that she calls them, and she says, oh, you can put this under your pillow and it takes away all your worries. And so she gives one out to everybody, and Bruce Wayne sees this Mayan witch doctor guy up on the rooftop, and he goes to try to capture him, and he's using all these old ancient weapons and blow darts and things like that, and the guy eventually escapes, and he's talking to Alfred, and he goes, wow, there's this new guy in town, but hey, who knows? It's Gotham. There's crazy people running around. And then Alfred finds a little worry man. He slips it under Bruce Wayne's pillow unknowingly, and the next day, Bruce Wayne's going to the office, and the secretary hands him a briefcase, says, here's what you asked for, but I don't know why you wanted $20 million in a briefcase. He goes, and he walks into his office, he sets it down on the ledge, and he's sitting there, as his assistant comes in and says, hey, Bruce, this is none of my business, but why are you giving, why do you want $20 million? He goes, what are you talking about? I didn't ask you to do that. Meanwhile, the witch doctor comes in, swoops off, takes the money, and he runs off with that. This happens to several other people that were also at this party, and Bruce Wayne's now putting it together and goes, oh, well, it's got to have some sort of mind-controlled device, and who else better to do that than the Mad Hatter? They find him, track him to this costume shop lair that he goes to. He goes there, he fights a bunch of puppets of the other villains, and eventually defeats the guillotine to be able to capture Mad Hatter and sends him off to Arkham Asylum. I've even done this twice.
And when you wake up, poof, Your problems are gone.
So like I said, I love that the Mad Hatter is in this episode. We haven't seen a lot of him yet, and he's just a cool villain. His episodes end up being a little weird, a little different because of just his kind of motif around that, and I like that.
You can't even handle one man dressed up like a flying mouse?
Again, we've talked about it before, but that's the thing about Batman that makes it so dynamic is each villain kind of shapes and dictates how the episodes go. Also, just to give you kind of a snapshot of where we're at, is that here we are in the second season, and I like that we're using different villains. We're not using those same worn-out villains. And I have to say, we're 4 episodes into the second season, and no Joker. And I also like that this episode's structured very similar to Perchance to Dream in the sense that Mad Hatter doesn't really appear till the end, which creates this mystery. And you're seeing these kind of new villains run around, the Mayan guys run around. And it creates this mystery because we don't know who's doing this yet until Bruce Wayne figures it out. And I always enjoyed those type of mysteries where we're kind of running right alongside Batman and figuring it out along with him.
Neither you nor Veronica could have known that hidden within each doll was a tiny microchip designed to stimulate a sleeper's brain waves and make them susceptible to hypnotic suggestion.
I also like in this episode that Bruce Wayne himself is a victim of the crime. I mean, yes, a lot of times the villains are stealing something from Wayne Tech or one of the Wayne companies, but here we have Bruce Wayne taking $20 million of his own and through the control of this mind device gives it away and lets this Mayan guy take it. And I think that's kind of neat. It makes him even more human because that doesn't happen very often. A lot of times he's helping other people, but here's one that he is personally invested in.
20 million of my money in that case?
And speaking of the other people that were victims of this crime, it was a nice surprise to hear LeVar Burton doing a voice of Hayden Sloane in this episode.
I'm a little old for dolls, don't you think?
I've always been a big fan of LeVar Burton, so it was a nice surprise to hear his voice. But he's a tremendous actor, and it almost seems a shame that he's doing kind of a smaller role in this episode. But he does have such an iconic voice that it would have been nice to see him playing maybe a prominent villain or a regular character on the show. But maybe because this was in the heyday of Reading Rainbow, maybe it would have been too iconic to have his voice. Although, even as I'm saying that, I'm thinking that why not have him play a prominent character in the show? Because, I mean, Roddy McDowall, of all people, has a very distinctive voice. It would have been nice to see him doing more. Although, maybe he was just busy. He had Reading Rainbow, and I'm trying to think, Star Trek The Next Generation was out around this time. Maybe it hadn't started yet. Maybe it was a little bit later. It was earlier. I don't remember. So maybe he was just too busy. But it was great to hear him in this episode, and actually hear him again, speaking of how iconic his voice is, you hear him again later speaking for one of the thugs.
How'd I get here?
For me, one of the highlights of this episode is when Batman finally deduces that it is the Mad Hatter, and he goes and he finds his hideout at that costume shop or prop company or whatever that was. Although it was a little weak in how he figured out, how he deduced where he was hiding.
As you predicted, sir, the computer has identified this scrap of artificial fur as a type used in theatrical productions, which would make its most probable source of origin
The Great Eastern Costume Company. It's been closed for years, making it a perfect hideout for the Mad Hatter.
But once he gets there, one of the things that I thought was really neat was that they used the mannequins or puppets of the other villains for Batman to fight. So we got to see the other villains in the episode, and Batman's battling them, but they were these puppets of Joker and Harley Quinn and Penguin and Riddler and that. So that was really a cool moment of the show.
I knew you were coming, so I thought I'd have some of the old chaps round to make you feel at home.
And again, here we have this weak motive, in my opinion, of a villain motivated by greed, wanting to get money.
A wonderland of treasures, all willingly donated by Gotham's simpering elite.
We see this come up time and time again. I was disappointed that was the motive for the Mad Hatter because, you know, in his original episode, he was motivated by love and jealousy, and it was such a breath of fresh air to have a different motive for a villain rather than, oh, I just want to go rob this bank or get this money.
You disappoint me, Tetch. For all your brilliance, you've become just another thief.
You make it sound so common.
Although it's a kind of a different take on it.
After my recent release from Arkham, I vowed to leave Gotham and my wicked ways behind me. You perhaps buy a little island somewhere and open a sunbonnet shop. Oh, but islands, even little ones, cost money.
Of course, to do that, he has to commit one last crime of stealing money to buy the island. So it just kind of falls apart for me there. But I don't know. Maybe I should go easier on this plot device because it is pretty standard. We see this all the time. But for right now, the poor guy just wants to steal a bunch of money and buy an island. That should have been the plot. He should have been motivated to steal an island. Skip the buying money and skip the stealing money to buy an island legitimately. It should have been some plot about how he brainwashes the owners of an island or a property to work for him and let him live there, or something to that effect, where he has decided to retire but is using his mind control devices to steal an island. Why don't we do that? Let's rewrite the episode.
So, as this is my farewell to crime, I think I'll take a souvenir to mark the occasion.
So this episode does kind of fall into that classic pattern of a villain out doing something bad and Batman having to stop him and finally figure out where he's at, and there's a big final battle. Batman comes out victorious. But it's still a fun episode. I mean, Mad Hatter is fun. The mind control devices, Roddy McDowall is excellent. LeVar Burton's excellent. The whole Mayan motif is fun. The setting of the final battle in that puppet shop, costume shop is very fun. So all those things are really fun to watch, even though the plot kind of falls into kind of this classic format.
He left it dead, and with its head, he went galumphing back. No!
So when it comes time to rank this episode, I know this is kind of a fan favorite. I hear a lot of people talking about the Worrymen, and in fact, some people have mentioned that in the comments. And in no ways is it a bad episode. It is a very fun episode to watch, but you have to admit it does fall into kind of that classic structure of the story. Bad guy does something bad, Batman stops him. I found that the ones that I kind of tend to favor, or that I rank higher, are the ones that kind of take a twist on the way that they deliver the story. Not just great action scenes, or the animation was good, or the character's cool, although all those factors play into it. But it's some of those episodes that kind of have a new take on the story, or kind of a different way of telling the story, or have a better mystery to it. Those are the ones that I tend to favor in my list. And of course, your list, I'm sure, is very different for very different reasons. But for all those reasons, I ended up placing this at the number 38 spot of my favorite episodes. It falls just below Strange Secret of Bruce Wayne because that's very different. That's a different way of telling a story. And to me, it's always fun seeing multiple villains in an episode, although this one does, but they're just puppets. But I think just having a different type of plot of Batman in danger of losing his secret identity and trying to come up with a way of kind of sabotaging that just makes that one bumped up just above this episode. But it doesn't beat out the mechanic, because as much as the Penguin is a great threat in that episode, it kind of falls into that ABC kind of formula plot where Penguin's trying to get back at Batman and he's foiled. It's more just a duel than it is a mystery or a plotted episode.
Something to ensure that Jervis Tetch only dreams of a good, honest life from now on.
So is there something I'm missing about this episode? I feel like I may be a little bit on my own, that this episode doesn't rank as high on my list as it does on some other people's, but what am I missing about this? Is there some other layer to this that I haven't talked about? Let me know in the comment section below. Well, I made it through the second recording of this episode, and honestly, I think it turned out better than the first one did. So if you enjoyed this episode and appreciate my effort of having to record this episode twice for you, hit that like button. And if you want to see more episodes of me reviewing Batman the Animated Series, hit the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of those as they come out, because I have new episodes coming out every Tuesday and Thursday. And coming out this Thursday, I have my full review of Paging the Crime Doctor. As always, thank you so much for watching. I'm Andy Knode, and I'll see you soon.